Hello, welcome to the Talking City podcast coming to you from the Manchester Evening News. My name's Joe Bray, joined by Simon Bajkowski. And we've not got any games to talk about this week because the new reality for Man City is that we've got an end of the season where it's Pep can't talk about his 3 games a week because there's, I think, only 2 or 3 midweek games coming up between now and the end of the season. So we've got to look elsewhere for things to talk about, but I'm sure we will do it. Si, how have you found a week where you don't have to jet off somewhere in the Champions League, or you can just stay at home and put your feet up?
Yeah, quite peaceful actually. I'm not sure if I'll find every week like this, but yeah, it certainly makes a change. And yeah, you imagine it makes more of a change for City players who are just used to such a hectic schedule and suddenly find themselves with quite a bit of time.
I mean, Guardiola always talks about it, doesn't he? The just not being able to give his players time off, not being able to train, prioritizing days off and switching off rather than sort of getting on the training pitch and working on things. So maybe he can actually do that in the next couple of months. It's probably a luxury he's not had for 2 or 3 years, really.
Yeah. And it's kind of come at the best time if you think about a like a new squad, a squad that is being rebuilt. I know he said earlier in the season that his players were making kind of basic mistakes and they didn't have time on the training ground to fix them. Well, not only do they do now, but they also have time for the newer players to settle in and learn exactly what what Guardiola wants from them. So it's quite good from that perspective that the players have got everything they could want for in terms of the coaching, which they don't normally get because it's so focused on you go in here in 2 days, you've got to recover from this yesterday. And Guardiola is a coach who prioritizes rest as well. So, like, he if there is a chance of a few days off, he'll give them. So yeah, really not used to such levels of training, really.
I thought it was a little bit interesting that he only gave his players 2 days off after the Saturday game. It was Sunday, Monday off, Tuesday in. I think at the same time he really wants to actually just work with the players, but it's different and refreshing from his point of view to see a training gallery when they publish these pictures with all the players. And we've not had that. It's always been right. It's only the players who didn't play the game before, or X, Y, and Z is injured. It feels like he's got most of his squad there. Obviously, the defenders, we've learned about Nathan Ake being out for a long time. That gives players like Kusanov and Rice time to get used to the system. But it does feel like he has something that he's been wanting all season and been complaining about. So it'll be interesting to hear what his thoughts are in the press conference about even just in 1 week how much progress he thinks he's been able to make.
Yeah, it's. I think it is interesting, like you say, that they were back on Tuesday, just because, yeah, you just don't see it. And when we say they train, it's like, yeah, they probably go through. They have one training session before a game. So much of it is going to be sort of walking through ideas of how the opponent might play and things like that. And the so whereas they will have had time in the last week and will have time, between now and the end of the season to give it a bit more intensity than it has had, because then they're not needing to recover from the games. So it's one of those things where you say, like, City, we should see the improvements of it before the end in the matches. Then that is a worry and kind of an expected. But if you do, then you sort of, the opposite of that is, you think they've come through the other side of it and they're through the worst of it and they're ready to go again. Because the jury is still out on, is this team done or has it got more to give? Um, and that's, the players can answer that between now and the end of the season.
And what better way, not just in the games, but you've got time to actually show Guardiola that either you still have it or you have a role to play next season. There's a lot of places up for grabs in the Club World Cup in next season. There's not going to be a pre-season. I think I've said this before. This couple of months has got to be basically the pre-season where Guardiola can implement ideas if he wants to change things up, get those new players from January up to speed, and just getting used to the system. How does he want Nico Gonzalez to play next season when Rodri's there, rather than just you playing at number 6 this year? And I think there's a lot of things that he can use this time to do, as well as chase the FA Cup and a top 4 finish and the Champions League. And another interesting development this week was probably expected, but in the youth league the youth team had a big game in the youth league. They could have picked Nico O'Reilly and didn't, because he was chosen to be with the first team. He could well have been given that time to go on a Tuesday, Wednesday game to Germany, to Hoffenheim, and play and still come back and be available for the bench for Forest. But that sort of underlines where he is in his development, and he's a definite first team player, but also how sort of strict and prioritized that this week has been for Guardiola on the training pitch. He wants all of the players he has available, even if maybe one or two of those players could have been better served playing an actual football game.
Yeah, like I'm sure the academy would have loved to have had him for the game because he would have made a real difference to them. But it will have been noted by Nico O'Reilly that he was kept in the first team squad rather than going to the game. It will have been noted by everyone else in the first team that he was kept in the first team squad rather than going for the game. And they're maybe thinking, well, does that mean he's definitely part of the first team now? What does that mean for me and things like that? And not that he was not part of the first team, but it was an example where they could have spared him. And after his 2 goals in the FA Cup in midweek, and suddenly there's a lot more shouts for him to be a left back backing up Guardiola and things like that. And if nothing else, showing he can offer his quality to the team in a range of positions. So that will have been noted across the squad, because suddenly everyone's not quite sure of where they are in the squad at the minute and where they will end up kind of next season.
Yeah, I think I wonder if the Ake injury changed that, because he has been playing at left back. He's probably number 2 at left back now in terms of who has played when Guardiola hasn't. He's been the one that Guardiola's gone to in the cups. You've got Rico Lewis, but he's probably needed on the right and has tailed off a little bit. So as much as he might have wanted to play a decent level of youth football and test himself in Germany, it probably benefits him a little bit more to try and force his way in, because he's got an opportunity now, I think, not to start every game, maybe not any game, but just play every now and again, relieve a bit of pressure on Guardiola and just show what he can do to Guardiola. I think that could be a quite interesting player to watch towards the end of the season, just the way that it's worked. And obviously he's played in the youth league already this season, and let's be fair, they didn't need him because they went to Hoffenheim and they won. And 7 years without a knockout victory, and then 2 come at once. They maybe rode the luck a little bit against Midtjylland and came back and won on penalties, but this one was probably a bit more of a hard fought, substance over style win. But to win a quarter final away from home is the type of game the academy have not been winning, and have been very vocal about falling short in these games where there's a bigger crowd than usual, not got home advantage, and they've found various ways to mess that up. This time they've gone away from home twice and beaten 2 decent teams given their record in the youth league, and now they've got a quarter final and a really good chance.
Yeah, and beating a good team without Nico O'Reilly and without Jacob Wright, who's gone to Norwich on loan. And it's funny because it's a competition where City feel they've underachieved in. And Cheeky Begiristain absolutely loves this competition. Absolutely loves it. He's sort of picked up talent from it before, and like he thinks it's the best way of sort of testing the young players, and seeing which are the best young players in Europe. And City have not shown that they are part of it enough, really. Like one semi-final is the best effort for 11, 12 years. And that was way back in 2018. So like City know they need to do better, but at the same time, they're not going to give sort of people the best chance of doing it. They're not going to give the coaches the best chance of doing it, because they're going to say, right, well, actually, we're not going to give you the best players that you can have. And the draw could have been a lot kinder to them. They've played Midtjylland were national champions, so didn't automatically qualify for this because of the senior team's achievement, and the same with Hoffenheim. So it was tough, and it was nice. It was good to see the performance that had quality, but also a lot of control, because City were under the cosh a bit for the final part of it as Hoffenheim chased an equaliser. And I thought it was kind of a really mature performance from 16, 17, 18-year-olds in kind of how to see a game out.
I think it helped that they had, just like the first team do sometimes, 5 centre backs on the pitch. You've got Stefan Mafuni and I think Kyle Samuel at fullback, but they are centre backs by trade. They're bombing forward, but also helping out inside. You got Caden Braithwaite playing as a number 6. He played in the Youth Cup the other week. He played as a sort of centre back, doing the John Stones role, pushing forward. He was a definitive number 6, and that probably helps your solidity in defending like that. But no, it stuck me, because my initial thought was, have they actually played that well? And then you think they've probably lost these games in the past because they've tried to play lovely attacking, flowing football and left themselves open at the back. And then this one was maybe not as many highlights, but they did what they needed to do. And like you say, in the second half, they defended that lead quite well. They scored a couple of nice goals, and I think the standout for me was the goalkeeper, who saved a penalty and scored a penalty in the shootout in the last round, Oliver Watmuth, and then 3 really, really big saves when City were getting a bit of pressure against them. So it's you need all those things to come together, and certain players to do what they're asked to do when it matters. And I mean, Regan Heskey didn't have his best game, but he still scored a very, very good goal when it mattered. And I think it's 24 for the season now for him. And I think it was that sort of thing. Everyone just did what they needed to do at the right time, and then they get probably a bonus in that Real Madrid were waiting in the next round, and they have 30 odd shots against Alkmaar and lose 2-0. So they've now got to go to AZ Alkmaar rather than Real Madrid, which on paper feels like a better tie. Although this is the side that have just knocked out Real Madrid and I think Man United in the round before. So it's youth football. I think we're finding is you can look at the Hoffenheim or Midtjylland and think, oh yes, it'll beat these easily because the first team aren't very good. But
Yeah.
sometimes those youth teams are a lot better. I mean, Man United, their youth team is probably better than the first team, and City would fancy the chance of beating the first team. But at youth level, they're very, very equal, those two teams. So it's going to be a test, but it's probably a better test and a better chance than going to Real Madrid.
Yeah, I think I tweeted that they'd got through, and I think it was a City fan who replied. It was like, yeah, well, they've probably got Real next, as if to say, well, they're going out. You're like, yeah, you can't really count all those kind of chickens in the same way. Yeah, it's not going to be easy because Alkmaar are very good, but it's one of those again where, yeah, you're probably happier for avoiding the name of Real and avoiding the name of sort of like, it would have been at Real's training ground, which is quite a impressive / intimidating place. It's similar to the City Football Academy, really, and you would have had all the first team Real stars maybe knocking about. So it could have been difficult in that sense, whereas there's maybe a bit less pressure going to Alkmaar than there would have been Madrid. And they are one game away from the big showpiece final, because City UEFA do the semis and the final in the same place at their headquarters in Neon. So, in the same way that in the FA Cup, you talk about sort of one game from Wembley. Well, City are one game from the finals in the
One
sense
game
of,
from Neon.
yeah, yeah. They are, one game away from being part of this showpiece gala that they've only ever been part of once.
It's looking good for the academy, isn't it? They've got Youth League quarter final, FA Youth Cup semi final, top of the 18s and the 21s league. They've booked a place in the playoff system of the Premier League too. There could be quite a lot to fight for at the end of the season for these young players. And if you look at the young players that they've been without at various points of the season because of first teams and injuries and players who've been sold, it's quite impressive and a good turnaround from last year where the 18s did all right but lost the title to a very, very, very good United side. And then the 21s probably, well, definitely underperformed. But it's just been a lot more like you expect from the academy this year, and a lot of good players playing very well.
Yeah, and it's it's nice to see a good year for the academy after the disappointment last year, because last year wasn't great, and you sort of think, oh right, well, what's gone wrong? Have key people left? Has the style changed? Has something sort of have they suddenly lost loads of talented youngsters? Is that what it is? And I think there has been a feeling with the academy that has been a bit thin in numbers, in the sense of like there have been so many talented youngsters sold. And it's sort of like they don't need to have made any first team appearances, but you look at like Joel and Darla, really impressed under 18s level, really, and straight away he's whisked away and things like that. But they have sort of proved that wrong this year with the performances. They're still in with a chance of winning the biggest 4 trophies I think they could win. I know there's the EFL trophy, but it's a bit of a strange one. The sort of 4 biggest for their age they could win. And it's really difficult to stand out for City's youngsters because there's a first team who can spend whatever they want, and previous age groups have done so well. So I think that's why the youth league is especially sort of being targeted this season, because everyone who's playing in it knows that the people that have gone before them, the Rico Lewises, the Phil Fodens, the James McAtees, etc., haven't done themselves justice in the competition, and they see an opportunity to impress, the sporting director, the manager, and sort of further their case to be part of the first team squad.
They did, of course, win the Youth Cup last year, which we should definitely mention because that was a fine achievement. And they're looking, I think, a semi-final at Watford coming up, and potentially a final at Old Trafford if United get through. So that could be an exciting showdown at the end of the season. But talking to the players who beat West Brom in the last round, they were saying they want to do themselves justice because they were maybe on the fringes last year watching the 18-year-olds win the trophy and score the goals. They were 16, 17. Now they want to be doing it themselves, and they might have a winners medal in that competition, but they want to earn it, if you like, and play a big role in that. So that there's always a motivation for that. So it's I think especially with these 3 midweeks for the first team, there's going to be a lot of academy stories coming out and trophies to fight for. And you would hope, from a City point of view, a lot of finals. Let's move on before we get to Nottingham Forest and back to the first team. A few sort of off-field updates this week. We've learned that we have a Mother's Day Sunday trip to Bournemouth in the FA Cup at 4:30. Not the best for travelling fans, but if you are a Fulham or Crystal Palace fan playing each other, you get a nice Saturday 12:30 kickoff. It just feels again like TV audience has been put ahead of the fans, and I know it's a small stadium and the numbers aren't as big as they might be, but for those fans, it's just another reason why you would not want to. You can not even be able to justify it if you're getting back in the early hours of a Sunday morning ahead of a working school week.
Yeah, the FA ended up in an almighty mess, and the Premier League as well. whereby the Premier League fixtures for that weekend had only just come out, and at least one team in every FA Cup quarter-final tie was due to play on the Tuesday in the Premier League, which meant that for all of them playing on a Sunday would be out the question. So it's ended up with a fudge, and some teams have been shifted, and nobody's really got what they want. So it's one of those things. It is horrible for fans who've not been thought of again. Like Bournemouth is not the easiest place to get to at the best of times, but trains on a Sunday instantly makes your heart sink. And then, Bournemouth had a quick look at flights, and no, no dice on them either. And it's going to be a tough game for City. It was probably the toughest draw they could have had as well in the FA Cup. So yeah, not loads of positives from that draw and that scheduling.
Yeah, I think the last train back is about half an hour after the very earliest point that the game could finish, but that doesn't account for any injury time getting out of the stadium, getting to the train station, or what you could expect quite realistically, extra time and penalties. So it's looking like anyone who wants to go to that game will be driving, which will be a fun drive back, and on Mother's Day as well. So not ideal when we saw that one. We published a couple of weeks ago a story about all the ticketing issues at the Etihad, the Real Madrid fans in the home ends. We've spoken about it a little bit. We did ask City for some numbers of what was going on with that, and they did not give us any, but they have given those numbers now to City Matters. And I suppose the important thing is they've given those numbers to the fans, and they are out there, and that's got to be some sort of a positive. But it sort of paints a picture of what happened at that Real Madrid game, of why there was a half empty away end and a lot of fans wearing Real Madrid colours in the home end. The answer that City gave to City Matters was Real Madrid have complete control of who is allowed in that away end, which is standard for UEFA games, and they only wanted members to have tickets, so that led to non-members buying tickets, and then they couldn't be moved into that away end. There's been a lot of accounts suspended. I think 150 directly as a result of that game for reselling tickets from the home end. I think 160 something bans over the course of the season for reselling tickets, because it isn't just the Madrid game; it's an ongoing issue. So I suppose transparency is good, but it's not necessarily the end of it. It's not the end of the issue, and it sort of raises as many questions, doesn't it? Of okay, we understand a little bit why these fans weren't buying tickets in the away end, but how were they allowed to buy tickets in the first place? Is, I suppose, one place to start.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about this, and we've discussed the concerns and the issues and things like that. And it's nice that the club have finally sort of talked about what they've done, because like we did ask them specifically. It was after the Real Madrid game, wasn't it? What have you done to address safety concerns ahead of Liverpool? And it turns out they've banned X number of accounts and things like that. And I don't think anyone expects all ticketing issues to be fixed, to be a fix. And I think there are always going to be some issues and some instances where the club just aren't on the same side as a sort of significant chunk of their match going fan base who go every week. But I think all you want as fans is for the club to be seen to be acting and sort of doing something to stamp out the worst bits of it. And if they've banned so many accounts after Real Madrid, you would like to think that that fans feel better for that. And if they ban, if it turns out they ban more after Liverpool, then like the same. Like I think sometimes we sort of expect the club to have to just do everything perfectly, and they can't. But if you can't be perfect, then at least just sort of respond to respond to the problems and let people know that you're responding to the problems. And so yeah, I mean there aren't really any sort of huge games left at the Etihad this season. Maybe Villa at home is the most high profile, where there's the possibility for fans getting into the home end and things like that. So we'll have to see what the club do. But I think I felt more informed for reading the minutes from that City Matters meeting, and I would encourage anyone who is sort of interested in it to go and read that to see what the club have been doing, and what the fan groups have been discussing with the club and talking about with the club.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of credit due for the fans for raising it and the club for responding to those questions. And there's a breakdown of season tickets and percentages of who sells the ticket back on the exchange and that sort of thing. And it's just that transparency is useful when discussing the topic, I think. And it's everyone's in a better position for knowing that, rather than guessing and just say we know it happens, but knowing how much it happens is a good place to start. So yeah, I think it's a positive step that those minutes have been published and not just kept between the people who were at that meeting, as well. Should we move forward to Nottingham Forest, because that is where City are going? The last couple of visits have not been the easiest of games. I think in the treble year, City drew, and Guardiola said it was the most Guardiola press conference of all time afterwards, where he said they were brilliant and one of the best performances of the season. And then last year when they won, he was saying they were better the year before when they drew. But the running theme is Nottingham Forest have not made it easy for City, and this year is the added complication, if you like, that Forest are above them and chasing a Champions League spot themselves. So in theory, that will make it even more difficult. They've got a good home record. They've maybe dropped a little bit from over Christmas, where they were winning a lot of games, but they're still well placed. And if they could even hold City off for a draw, then that is a big boost for their own European hopes. So I think it's going to be, I would say this is City's most difficult game of the season remaining, just in terms of, obviously Forest are above them, but it's away from home, and the rest of the teams they've got to face are sort of not of there's no real big six clubs apart from going to United. I'd say this is far more difficult than going to Old Trafford at present. So it's going to be an interesting one, and I'm not sure we're going to see a perfect performance in terms of flowing football. It might just be one that we've seen over the last couple of years, where they've just got to get in, get a goal, get some points, and get out.
Yeah, do you know what? Pep was absolutely right about those performances, because City battered them in the treble year and then were incredibly lucky to get out alive. And last season they were, because it was huge that game, because Arsenal was still obviously very close in the title race, and dropping points would. I think Arsenal played before City on the day.
Didn't they get a really late winner or something?
No,
Or was
no,
that the year
that
before?
that was the year before when they came from behind against Villa, but on
Yeah.
last year, it was the North London derby, and, they battered Spurs, and I think they were 3-0 up, and then it was 3-2 in the last 10 minutes, was it? And was sort of it was one of those where Arsenal would have been kicking themselves if they'd thrown it away, but Spurs kind of unexpectedly gave themselves hope in the final 10 minutes. Um But yeah, I did some radio this week about the game, and all they wanted to ask about was Forest. And it was like, you know what? Fair enough. Like, Forest have been one of the stories of the season. And, they were sort of saying Nuno has a good case for being manager of the season. And was thinking, yeah, not really thought about it, but it's probably him or Slot. Slot obviously there because Liverpool are going to win the league. But in terms of achievements and like sort of achievements above expectation. I think there were loads of people that expected Forest to really struggle this season. So for them to be sitting in third is crazy. And also, City beat them 3-0 at the Etihad in December, and I think they either went above them or they went further, a few more points ahead of them, and you sort of thought, right, well, that's that then. So for City to be heading to Forest a few months on and they're behind them in the league so completely agree. I think it's going to be the hardest game left this season in the league.
I think last year Guardiola came out and said the grass was too long, but weirdly it was the grass helped us because Chris Wood missed a couple of really big chances. Um, he then said later in the season that they trained on a dry pitch ahead of Fulham because they did the same as Forest, and he was very, very keen not to use that as any excuse. But it's that sort of thing where it's an old ground, the fans are on top of you. The fans at the City ground are very, very noisy. And I remember that 1-1 game, the noise when Forest scored was one that you remember. It was such a celebration, and you can feel like if Forest are going to get anything, it's going to really be helped by the fans as well. But if they can use their home advantage of if they can do a dry pitch again, if they can maybe not cut the grass as long and just disrupt City, it's worked in the past. And they were City sides who were marching to the title. This is a City side who are still trying to even now, find their feet and find their identity and get through to the end of the season. So I will ask you for a prediction in a little bit, but it's another one where I keep saying it, I've got no idea, but I think it's because I wouldn't bet against Forest getting something because, like you say, they've done very well, and everyone expects them to, right. Okay, they'll drop off soon. They'll fall away, but every time you think this is the game they're going to fall off, they don't, and they deserve a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, like I think if City win on Saturday, it will cement the idea that they will get top four. Like for all the wobbles that they've had, like they're too good. Winning at Forest, winning at Spurs, they're too good to not finish in the top four. But conversely, Forest get a point or Forest get a win against City, and you sort of think, yeah, why can't they finish top four? Why can't they finish third? Um, because, like you say, that you keep on waiting for a return sort of expectations, and Forest keeps subverting them. So um, it's going to be really interesting. The pitch thing will be interesting because, like you say, they have been better City teams in the past. Um, there've been teams where you're sort of approaching the game as opponents, and you're thinking, "My God, this team has no weaknesses. How do we get at them?" And you do various things. Well, they've looked. Everyone has looked at City this season and seen loads of weaknesses. So maybe Forest don't bother with the dry pitch. Maybe they just kind of think, well, we've seen enough that we can get at without needing to sort of rely on anything like that. So yeah, it's going to be. Previously, it has been kind of a Forest that has been scrapping to stay in the division. Whereas, it's going to be a much more confident Forest and a much more confident City ground that City are going to have to deal with.
I think as a neutral, if Forest could get the Champions League, just that story and the turnaround and all their history in that competition, and that would be so good and refreshing to see next season. I think Villa have really embraced the Champions League this year, and they've got their own history in it. But I think Forest would be something else. I think that would be good to see. So yeah, I'm not sure how it will go down on Saturday, but it will be interesting to see just how those dynamics have shifted from the last couple of years, because they've been probably two of the most memorable games of those seasons in terms of a team really pushing City and making them work for whatever points they get. I think it'll be exactly the same on Saturday. We're probably going to see a new look defense again. Nathan Ake is out. You would expect maybe for the season. It's no time frame on it, but foot surgery with 3 months left of the season doesn't feel like he's going to be playing a massive part, if any, towards the end of the campaign. So naturally, with Akanji and Stones out, you only can really turn to Player of the Month, record-breaking Player of the Month, Abdulkadir Kusanov. But the central defensive options are now again a bit thin.
Yeah, I mean, you have 4 centre backs for the season, and 3 of them are out for months. It's not ideal, but that is the position that City find themselves in. So it's another one of those where they're sort of going to the rebuild is coming, and they're coming towards this big change over summer, and you think, well, with the way things are, maybe the change just happens a little sooner, because Kusanov and Raish were both bought for the future, but circumstances have dictated that they've had to be for the present as well. Kusanov would have never normally have started against Chelsea on his debut in ordinary times, but they weren't ordinary times because everyone was injured. So he's going to have to go again, and it's not going to be sort of the defense that we've known. Really, and City are going to have to work through that, but with problems comes opportunities, and it's likely going to be Kusanov, but also Lewis or Nunes or anyone else who gets a chance in that defense. As a result, has the chance to show why they should be part of next season, or even just why they should play next week. So there's plenty of.
Yeah, I was just going to say about right back, you probably wouldn't want Lewis or Nunes on form to be playing a massive role when you're chasing a top 4 spot in an FA Cup and going into the Club World Cup, but they've got to play, and it's up to them to show that they've had ups and downs this season, but if they can end it on a high, again, going back to the whole sort of pre-season idea, this is where they earn their place. And Lewis did it in last season's summer in pre-season. He locked down that right back spot to the point where Kyle Walker had to go. He's probably had a bit of a dip now. He's really got a chance to show that. And I suppose the fixture list is opening up for him in that there's no sort of elite clubs, if you like, in inverted commas, with these massive wingers. There will be tough tests because there is always tough tests in the Premier League, but he's probably got a chance where you would want him to use this season and push on towards the end of it and go again and maybe earn that Club World Cup spot. So I think, yeah, they are weaker by just the senior players being missing, but the fact that you can't put a Kanji there as a solid option, or Stones, or whoever you want, you've got to play someone like Lewis or Kusanov in the centre. I think City will learn a lot more about those players than if they were being rotated in and out and playing 20 minutes here and there. Can I get a prediction from you? Any, maybe not just score, but also like, do you think he's going to go rogue with any team selections? He's had a week to really mould the game plan that he wants. He's rested a few players last week. It's going to be interesting to see who he sees in what could be his strongest side going forward.
Yeah, I mean, Lewis is a player who has looked more than most like he's just needed like these long weeks with training where not much is going on, and he can get back to what he's done very well, because it's easy to forget he was very, very good at the start of this season. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really tight game, quite scrappy, and I don't know if with despite talking up Lewis there, whether he goes for the physicality of Nunes. The last very good performance they gave was Tottenham away, which really kind of furthered the top 4 hopes. So maybe similar, but I mean, I would. Yeah, I think it's going to be really tight. Is it a game for Jack Grealish, maybe? Fresh from his tour of the Northeast to sort of give City that control and also show, that he can let his football do the talking.
Well,
Maybe.
the home game was one of his better games this season when he played more centrally, which was sort of needs must. But City won
Yeah,
that game when they weren't winning any games, and he came in and played very well. So yeah, I think it's not going to be a game for maybe Doku and Savino. I think it will be a game for keeping the ball and controlling. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Grealish on that team sheet. And he probably needs the appearance bonus for all that money he's been putting behind the bar.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Although, yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting, sort of the winger situation now in the sense that you do have Doku and Savino in form and Grealish sort of pushing when he plays. Um, and you can only pick so many, and Marmoush is in there as well, and then you've got Foden and De Bruyne to think about. So it is you are getting that competition for places up there, even if it is kind of not there in defence because everyone's injured.
And it's not like you can say, all right, we'll play this person in this game because there's another one on Wednesday and you can rotate. They've got weeks between these games now. So I feel like the teams that we're going to see is going to be partly the team that Guardiola thinks can definitely beat the opposition they're facing, but also maybe the team he wants to try out going forward, and maybe we'll see a bit more of what his plans are for the future. If he says that Doku and Savino and Haaland are the future front three, then are we going to see that more often? I'm not sure. Forest will be the game for all three of those, but if he's saying that, then that there's got to be some thinking that that's what he wants to try out moving forward. So yeah, I will be interested more than often to see what direction he goes with the team sheet. Can they get a win? Will it be another draw? I think Forest have maybe got the best chance of beating City uh, since they've come back up to the Premier League.
Yeah, I think they can get a win. That I'm more confident in saying that after the Tottenham performance, but yeah, absolutely they can. But also, like you say, Forest have got a very good chance, and a sort of in a different position where previously that it was more about sort of Forest surviving and scrapping, and now Forest can sort of reasonably think, well, yeah, we can take the game to City, or take their version of their game to City, to get a good result. So I think it will be a bit more open than previous games have been, but it really is one, as you would like to hope, between sort of two teams in the top four, where anyone can pick up the win.
I think that's it. Yeah, you can see Forest versus City, but it's third versus fourth. It should be the game of the weekend, and it should play a massive part in can both of these teams get the top four. So I'm going to say a cautious 2-1 to City, but if it was 2-1 or 1-0 to Forest, I would not be surprised at all. I'd think it'll be tight, whatever happens, because even when City won 2-0, that sort of flattered City, if you like, that sort of 2-goal cushion. There was not a lot in it when City go to the City ground. So yeah, we'll be there tomorrow lunchtime. We'll be giving you all the updates from Nottingham and the reaction and everything Guardiola and any players say after the game, and then looking ahead into next week and another free midweek. But Brighton next week, we'll be back with the Talking City podcast to review Forest, look ahead to Brighton, and any other talking points that do come up in the week. We'll be on top of them. Give us a like, a follow, subscribe wherever you are watching or listening to us, and we will get round to some comments. I think these free midweeks are a good time to get into some questions. So if you've got any questions, do let us know and we can try and attack them. Basically, just give us something to talk about when there's a lack of games in these midweeks. So yeah, we do appreciate that. Thank you for watching, and we will be back next week after City have played Nottingham Forest.